fine right, and the Reverend Eland was the school manager, so was his wife. This was the way things were supposed to be in the villages of those days. Anything else was Red Revolution. The backlash took the same form as at the previous school.
Well, we were not supposed to have a fire until a certain date, and she took it upon herself to have fires lit. I think there was a fire at each end of the school, and dry the children's clothes so that they shouldn't have to go home with wet coats.
And that's what the parson in the village didn't like. He said that she was wasting the coal to dry the children's clothes, you see, and other things as well. And things piled up, and of course he did it his business to try and get them out.
Now the Higdons were under siege. From the landowners because Tom Higdon was a union man, from the church because the Higdons were radicals and wouldn't even go to church. It was a formidable opposition. It was said that Mrs. Higdon lit fires in the school without asking permission, that she'd been uncivil to the parson's wife, and, more importantly, that she had beaten 2 Bernardo girls under the care of a woman in the village. If this were true, it were very serious.
And the children themselves told us that they were told to say it. It didn't happen at all. They were told to say that. And I suppose the poor little children were afraid otherwise, because I don't think she was a very good foster mother. I think she was very, very strict, and they did as she told them. And the rector put her up to this. I suppose she was afraid of losing the children, losing the money, because she got so much money for them.
Most of the village was on the Higdon side by now, and almost everyone believed, although it couldn't be proved, that this charge about the foster children was quite bogus.
I think that was just a little plot made up to get rid of them. The real reason why they got the sack was they were Labour people.
Because he was trying to organise a labourers' union.
Another pupil, Barney Ford.
He was doing his utmost to make things better for the farm worker, who were on very low wages at that time.
Starting the labourers' union, trying to improve the conditions, footpaths round the village, and toilets and different things for the poor old people who lived in these old houses belonging to the farms. They were poor old places then, and that was the real reason.
The village believed in the Higdons, but there weren't many friends outside. The National Union of Teachers found it hard to believe that people would deliberately plot against a couple of eccentric school teachers, and defended them very half-heartedly. There was a tribunal, and it went against them. The Higdons went to the children.
The schoolmistress said that no children, she said, we are not allowed to teach you anymore in this school.
And when we got home, we heard what our parents said. They said yes, we're not going to let this rest. And we had a meeting on the green, and Mr. Durbridge was chairman.
George Durbridge was a local character with a fine sense of rhetoric. Sol Sandy was there.
At the meeting they sent a resolution, I believe, to the House of Commons, and Mr. Durbridge said, stick, stick, stick like bloody shit to a blanket.
The parents were solid behind the Higdons, and so were the children. Violet Potter was 13 when she became the children's leader.
Well, I said to them, we want to know who's going out on strike and who isn't. Well, all but about 6 said that they would come out. I think it was about 72 children went to school then. And I put the names down on a sheet of paper that I'd got already. And that night when Mr. and Mrs. Higdon finished up, we stayed behind and helped to, Marjorie and I did, help to take her possessions indoors, because she'd got her sewing machine and her camera and her typewriter and a lot of personal belongings in the school, in the council school, and we took them into the schoolhouse. We slipped back into the school, and I turned the blackboard up. We had blackboard and chalk. We're going on strike tomorrow, and turned it to the wall, so that the teachers that came the next day, the new teachers, when they came to use this blackboard, that's what they would see.
Next day, April the 1st, 1914, was the big moment of action.
All collected on the green at the bottom, watched to see who went to the council school, and we thought they'd come with us, and some that we expected to come with us didn't, but I think there was about eight or nine probably went to the council school, and the rest of us all came on strike. And we all had pieces of cardboard, probably bits of boot box or something like that, wrote on, we want our teachers back, we want justice. And I think Bartlett Potter and Jack Mullinger, another striker, had an accordion and walked round the village like that.
And as we walked past the school teacher, the mistress and the master was standing outside the school, and she waved a handkerchief to us and waved. I could see that she was crying.
And either 3 or 4, I couldn't tell you which, one was a police sergeant, stood by, and 1 or 2 of the church wardens. They'd evidently got an inkling that something was going to happen. And of course we went by singing, and me with a piano chord and playing Hearts of Oak. That was our song.
Well, we just trotted along with the rest, more or less. There was quite a procession. I remember it. That's something we never forgot. But the main thing is we knew from our parents that we were doing something what was just. I say we all felt about it. I think every child understood there was a big reason, big cause.
We sat all round on the green, and the woman at the village shop, she brought out pails of lemonade for us to drink. And we were very, very hot. I always remember that 1st of April.
From that 1st of April, the records show that hardly a handful of Burston children were going to the council school. The children's strike was almost 100%. Violet Potter and the others urged on the campaign. By now, Annie Higden and Tom had become folk heroes of Burston, more famous every day. The daily marches and demonstrations of the militant children were now led by equally militant parents.
We marched past the vicarage one day, and this woman that was head of the strike, she said, "Here he is," and he came and wondered what all the banging was about, you see. And he came to his gates, iron gates, and looked through. "Here he is," she said, "the little devil."
I think they used to call him the Black Beetle.
We kept it up for some time until we had to start having lessons because we're getting round for non-attendance at school, you see.
The Higdens gave up their school, but they didn't give up their vocation. Every day they held their classes in the open air on Burston Green. The parents demanded the Higdens' reinstatement, but then in came the law. A group of parents were summoned for not sending their children to the official school.
Well, we formed a procession and marched to this, and we had buttonholes, red buttonholes. We all marched to court.
We went to the court, and the court was packed, and we couldn't get in. Then after, they called Mr. Aldridge in first.
Oh, they called my name first.
Old Jack Aldrich was one of 18 parents fined that day. The courtroom became another platform for their cause. They weren't kept there very long.
I didn't say, I didn't last many minutes. You see, I think I fined them about, I don't know, about 5 shillings each.
Some of the boys had got collecting tins. We collected all the money that was... So you could see a lot of people were in sympathy with us. Collected the fines.
A few weeks later, more parents were brought to court. But it was obviously hopeless, and by the authorities just gave up. Funds were opened for the strikers all over the place. And then someone offered the Higdens an old carpenter shop in Burston that they could use as their own school.
Very big place it was. Well, held all us anyway. There was a ladder, went upstairs. The seniors were taught upstairs, but the little tots were not allowed to go up that ladder. They always put in the mind of going up aboard a ship or something or other. But it was rough in there, but she made it, Mrs. Higden made it very, very comfortable for the children.
We had a timetable like we had in the council school. Everything was worked doing out time, starting from 9, religious scriptures, and 10 arithmetic, and 11 playtime, which, because we had to use the green for playground. The inspectors came down 2 or 3 times to see if they could find any fault with the education. They couldn't find a bit of fault. I think, if I remember it, the report was the reading and writing is well above the average, and religion is taught on sensible lines.
By now, naturally, a few children had started drifting back from the strike school to the council school for various reasons: anxiety, conformism, pressure, but not very many. When the 5 children of Jack Aldrich's family had to move to another village, the Higden faction had a quick answer.
I bought him a donkey and cart, and I used to ride in that.
So Jack Aldrich's children were able to stay on at school, riding with Charles and Elsie at the reins.
Until they made up their mind and out of the collection, they bought this donkey cart for us.
And the roadmen working on the sides of the road, they used to tickle under the tummy with a broom, a stiff broom, to make it run. And then if it came to a stream of water running across the road, they'd pull up dead, and we'd have to get out and lead it through. It wouldn't go through it.
So not only did the Aldrich children get to class, but this makeshift carpenter's shop school was helped by the arrival in Burston of strike supporters like the family of Wynne Leader from Ipswich.
My father worked on the railway line and worked quite a lot in the Burston area. And when the school strike started, he was the first one, so Mrs. Higden told me, who made a collection for the strike. Well, then eventually we went to Burston to live, and of course as soon as we lived there, I went to the school. He wouldn't have thought of me going anywhere else.
By now, everyone seemed to be paying attention to Burston village and the obstinate, abrasive, dedicated and unyielding Higdens. The feelings against the parson, the Reverend Eland, had practically emptied his church, and religious services were now held in the open air by lay preachers and political radicals of all kinds.
There always seemed to be something doing, some excitement. Of course, we had hundreds and hundreds of people came there to visit the school, to speak on the village green, and there was tremendous support.
The Agricultural Labourers' Union regularly turned up at Burston, often with its leader, George Edwards. Tom Higden was now committed to the union as its treasurer. This famous village green had visits from all the old socialist notables like Ben Tillett, the miners' leader, Tom Mann, the Labour pioneer, George Lansbury, the great pacifist, Philip Snowden, one day to be the Labour Chancellor, and from the great suffragette family, Sylvia Pankhurst. Burston Village Green became a kind of focal point of the English left.
Well, one Sunday we had a special train load of National Union Railwaymen from London.
They had these big banners, huge banners, and beautiful coloured silks, and all the gold tassels, and they took a couple of men each night, took care of these big banners, come off the station and march through the village.
Well, they came to the green, and we had a big meeting there then, and the Reverend Eland, he daren't come down the road to church. I suppose he thought they might set about him. He came to the footpaths and got through a gap in the hedge. Just to, because you see, you have to have a service, even if you, I think if you've got 3, you must have a service. And he just had 3 or 4 of his church wardens, and that's all.
Marjorie Ling's father was one of those who'd boycotted the church and supported the strike. But the Ling family had rented church land for generations, which meant he could be evicted.
The schoolmistress said, well, Mr. Ling, she said, put your chickens on there, claim it. Put your chickens on there. It is your land. And he put these chickens up and surrounded by the bar netting and things like that. And someone came and bashed it all down.
Another family, the Garnhams, had always grown their crops on glebe land rented from the church.
The parson tried to take this land away from them,